Good day, my name is Amos Ang. I am part of the Legal Issues in Software Development, Processes, Tools, Patterns and Ethics team in this course. Thus, this will be my entire presentation today. Today's presentation will be divided into several sections, namely Processes, Tools, Patterns and Ethics. These will be in the context of software development within each stage of the SDLC or Software Development Lifecycle. In order to begin, we must first look at the SDLC. The most common one involves several stages, namely planning, design, implementation, testing, deployment, and maintenance. In each stage, a fair amount of legal issues often occur, as you can see in the industry nowadays. Due to the complex nature of software development, there exist many landmines in the form of copyrights, patents, etc. I will be going through all stages in order, and within those stages, I will then discuss the various legal issues, patterns, and tools that are relevant within each stage. In the planning phase of software, it is important to determine the type and functionality of the software first. This is so that the developer is able to search the patents database to check if any patents exist for the software they want to create. A patent is an exclusive set of rights given to an inventor/creator of a product or a process. However, there are specific rules to what can and cannot be patented. An example of what cannot be patented is an idea. In Australia, there exists a patent lifecycle which consists of the innovation/creation stage, where the developers decide what they want to patent based on the regulations set by the patenting board. The acquisition stage, which involves the applicant finding out an application for where he or she wants the patent to apply. Payment is usually done in this stage, and it can be very costly to acquire a patent. The next step would be to acquire the patent itself. In this time, the patent holder is free to license the product out to the masses based on his or her criteria. In the event another company decides to violate the patent holder's agreement, the holder is allowed to sue the other party to claim damages. It has been argued that patents have a detrimental effect on innovation in this field specifically. Several arguments against patenting include software being math. This means that software is technically a transcription of an algorithm in a programming language, and thus it counts as a mathematical function. Since math cannot be patented, there have been efforts to classify software as math. There also have been cases where patenting allows larger companies to hinder innovation in smaller companies. In addition, different patents and published patent applications may use different words to describe the same concepts. These general terms that are patented can be used by patent trolls to threaten all kinds of innovators. An example of where the patenting system fails is when it allowed a company called Lotsys, whose primary function was to acquire patents and threaten entrepreneurs who allegedly infringed upon the purchased patents to operate. These patents that were purchased allegedly covered the in-app purchasing and upgrading functionality that companies like Apple and Google provide to developers as part of their operating systems. Companies like Lotsys make a business out of these lawsuits as opposed to actually innovating or creating a product. The next stage of software development would be design. In this stage, design functions and operations are described in detail. It is during this stage that the developers need to recheck the patent database, as there might exist designs of software that are similar to the ones the developer intends to create. It is also important to note that copyrights play an important role in this stage. During this stage, certain materials such as graphics or code may be introduced into the design of a software. The developer must ensure that they are aware of the copyrights of those materials in order to avoid infringement. The implementation stage is the stage where the plans laid out in the planning and design stage is realized and where coding begins. It is also in this stage that is where most of the lawsuits will target. This is due to the licensing of code/software used to create the product. Software can be split up into open source and proprietary/closed source categories. The licenses for each will vary from one another. In addition, under the umbrella of these two, it can be further subdivided into copyright, distribution rights, and trademarks. Based on the list of softwares that were posted on Blackboard, and after some time and research, I have found that in general, open source software will rely on either the Apache license or the GNU license, which makes sense as most of these open source softwares will typically use either one of them for their frameworks or APIs. In the distribution and copyright section for the open source software, actions like distribution, reproduction, modification, and things like sub-licensing of the code is allowed. However, there are a few requirements that must be fulfilled. The users or licensees of the software has to document all modifications made to the source code when it is distributed. That would mean including a text file or some readable text in the distributed program stating that if the developers made any changes, what are they? In addition, the standard legal file containing all the terms and conditions and agreements that the developer has agreed to has to be included in the copy of the program that is being distributed. As for trademarks, the licensees are not allowed to use any trademarks associated with the licensor. In the case of proprietary/closed source software, the companies that created them usually have their own set of license policies. However, they may be similar in several ways. In the distribution and copyright section for proprietary or closed source software, users or licensees are not allowed to redistribute or reproduce the code. Modification of the code might be allowed by certain companies, but in general it isn't allowed. Reverse engineering of the code is strictly not allowed as well. Users or licensees of the program retain copyright to the material that they create while using the program, as long as it belongs to them. The companies usually do not claim intellectual property rights over material that users provide. As for trademarks, similar to open source, the licensees are not allowed to use any trademarks associated with the licensor. An example of a case that might be relevant to this section would be the Oracle America versus the Google case that happened in the year 2010. In this case, Oracle claimed that Google had infringed upon 27 of their Java packages. The jury said that the API was infringed and the range check function was also infringed, but they were not charged because of Google's fair use defense. Oracle also claimed patent infringement on several of their other patents. However, in the end, the jury decided that no infringement was done. Software testing is then conducted to provide the developers with information regarding the quality of the software being produced. This is the stage where some major decisions are made regarding several liabilities that the developer could be held responsible for. One of which is the breach of contract. Most of the time during the testing stage, developers will receive feedback regarding the performance of the software. It is during this time that they will decide if they will delay the release of the software in order to fix these bugs or release it and patch it up later. These decisions may be made based on the size and how severe the bugs are. However, developers that are under a contract and having to adhere to a service level agreement or SLA may be put into legal hot water instead. Ethically speaking, a developer should ensure that the final product that is shipped out to consumers is able to function properly. Users should not have to learn how to fix the issue on behalf of the developer. An example where this is especially true would be found in the case of the game called Fallout New Vegas, which was published in the year 2010. At the time of its release, it was known as the buggiest product to be released. Consumers had multiple issues trying to run it, and some even had to resort to learning how to edit certain parts and sections of their computer just to be able to play it. In the deployment stage, this is the stage where the software is finally shipped out as a final product. In this stage, developers must be sure that whatever license agreement that their open or source codes refer to in their agreement be fulfilled in order to avoid a legal issue. As stated in the implementation stage, this may mean republishing several lines or even the entire license agreement that came from the code itself. It may also mean updating the license document with whatever changes the developer made to it. This is also where liability of the software as a product towards their customer comes into play. As stated by a security professional, Bruce Schneier, there is no other industry where shoddy products are sold to a public that expects regular issues and has to learn how to fix the issue. Computers are the only mass market consumer item that requires the consumer to have a high level of technical ability just to survive. The maintenance stage is a stage where the developer maintains the current state of the software for a certain period of time till they decide that it is the most optimal version and stop supporting it eventually. Ethically speaking, developers that have published software that did not go through proper testing or have failed proper testing should be held liable to their customers. The documentation stage of software is an important stage indeed. However, this has to be done at a consistent pace at each stage in order for the documentation to be more complete. This also involves items stated at the deployment stage where they have to republish lines of agreement terms. It is during this stage that the developer may choose to patent their work if it is possible. As stated in the beginning, they will have to go through the patent lifecycle in order for their patent application to be successful. In conclusion, the development of software isn't just as simple as it looks. There exist many legal issues that a developer may have to go through before their software can be distributed to the masses.